Welcome to the first episode of the Seth Pohle Show. I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to clarify exactly what I'm planning to use this podcast for. Every month, on my website, I post a blog post that talks about what's going on in my life or exactly what I'm thinking about around that time. I'm going to use this podcast to expand upon the stuff that I talked about in that blog post. So, without further ado, welcome to the show. The last blog post that I posted was on May 22nd, 2023. If you haven't read it yet, I urge you to go and do that because that'll make this podcast a whole lot clearer. In that blog post, I talked about how our morals define what we consider to be good or bad. In this podcast, I'd like to talk about how the morals tie into the laws, and therefore how our laws define what we consider to be good or bad. Now, a majority of society in the United States is going to rule. We have, the Constitution starts with 3 words, we the people. So, the people are an important part of the government. If a majority of the country were to not have a strong Judeo-Christian moral system, then the country would elect lawmakers into Congress who do not have Judeo-Christian values. Since the people in Congress do not have Judeo-Christian values, then the laws that would be created also would not be representative of Judeo-Christian values. Our founding fathers knew this, and so they knew that our society would not work if a majority of the country did not hold Judeo-Christian values and practice those values. We know that laws are meant to be enforced. Without enforcement, laws are nothing. So, this enforcement brings along with it some level of conformity. I've talked about conformity before on my blog and how it can be bad. Conformity has a serious problem in that conformity makes everyone follow one person. If that one person does not have a strong moral compass, it ends disastrously. And they would have to maintain that. That's not something that is guaranteed, and it's obviously not likely if you've seen any dictators or heard of any dictators. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, with that, we know that conformity based around a moral system is better than conformity around any other thing. Now, conformity around a bad moral system is still bad. But conformity around a Judeo-Christian value system will lead to much better things. We know that our country would ultimately be destroyed if the majority of Americans did not have a Judeo-Christian value, because the laws would not be representative of those values, and there would be no conformity of morals. We wouldn't know what morals to follow. We wouldn't know what morals to enforce. You have to enforce some morals, otherwise you end up with anarchy, and that's no fun. So, what level of conformity is good and what level of conformity is bad? Well, it's not so much the level of conformity. The problem is that conformity around good things is good and conformity around bad things is bad. We need laws. Laws are very, very important. and laws enforce some level of conformity around those values. But conformity past those values is bad, because that conformity, somebody is determining that conformity. Somebody is. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, having the laws that we have and the way that they are set up now, we're able to see how the systems of checks and balances is so vitally important to the country. Without it, one branch could take way too much power away from the other branches of government. We need that separation of powers, because without it, somebody is going to have too much power. This relates to issues that we're already dealing with today. On the issue of both abortion and homosexual marriage. On both of those problems, people are asking, how far should the law go? If it's not bothering anybody, should it be enforced? Should there be a law against it? Well, if our laws are representative of our morals, then we know that if it is morally wrong, then there should be a law against it. So, does that mean that every single problem that we have in society that's a moral problem should be a law? Maybe, maybe not. That's not for me to decide. But what I am saying is there's no reason that a law shouldn't be in place if it is morally bad. To what extent should we let the laws dictate our morals? How far should we let it go the other direction? If we let it go the other direction, bad things can happen. So, how do we deal with that? If there's a law that goes directly against Judeo-Christian values and is not representative of Judeo-Christian values, then what do we do? If a law goes against the Judeo-Christian moral system, we need to make sure that we stand up for our beliefs, that we do not conform to the world. We need to conform to the Judeo-Christian value system, not the world. That might mean that we get in trouble. That might mean a lot of things. But ultimately, it's more important that we continue to follow our Judeo-Christian moral system. Now, as of right now, most laws are following the Judeo-Christian value system. With that, if laws are following a Judeo-Christian value moral system, then what's the purpose of religious freedom? Well, religious freedom still allows us to practice our religion, go to church. That also protects other religions and other denominations. Whenever the Founding Fathers wrote that into the Bill of Rights, there were so many denominations of Christianity in the United States at the time. The idea was to protect these denominations. It was not necessarily to say you can do whatever you want and claim it's your religion. That's not it. Because that would ultimately lead to anarchy. There had to be a way to draw the line somewhere. This freedom of religion is important. I don't think there's anybody that's going to deny that. But you can't just say that violates your religious freedom if you don't believe in that. This is something that a lot of atheists have talked about. It's not violating religious freedom to show a manger scene. It's not violating religious freedom to show Christian symbols. It's not violating religious freedom to prohibit things that violate the Judeo-Christian value moral system. The reason why atheism is a lack of religion. There's nothing in there that says that you are required to not look at those things, or that you are required to be shielded from those things. Religious freedoms these religious freedoms allow people to express their religion freely. That's not to restrict anyone from being exposed to these religious cultures, religious ideas. The laws that would be created in the Judeo-Christian values moral system don't violate anyone's religion or religious freedom. Hand in hand with the idea of religious freedom is the idea of separation of church and state. This is an idea where the church should be held completely separate from the state, but that's not the way it's been treated. The original idea was that the state should not be allowed to interfere with the church. However, it's being enforced the other way around. The state is still allowed to interfere with the churches. The state is dictating to churches exactly what they are allowed to do, what they are not allowed to do, and many more things. It's also being used to keep churches out of state property, such as schools. However, the church is not allowed to have any say, in most cases, in any state function of any kind. Without the church, in the state, in the government, the country will fail. This separation of church and state, and the way it's being enforced, will lead to disaster. It has already headed that direction. It's causing many problems in society. Without the church, there would be no United States. The United States would not be anywhere near a world power. Without the church, the entire West and Western civilization would not exist. It's a Christian ideal. It's important that we keep the church in the things that we are doing.